Hi everyone, can you hear me loud and clear?
Yes.
Great. Awesome. So I hope all of you has your PyCharm installed and up, ready to write the code. As long as a lot of people join in, I will let you know about all the logistic, because during this meetup, which is slightly different than what we have done before, in all the previous meetup, we used to do coding in Jupyter Notebook, and it was easy to follow the code, but there will be a lot of code going on here, and it will be very uncomfortable typing everything in. So we will be what we will do is I will be writing some code, and then once we reach some kind of like a small module, I will push the code to GitHub, and you guys can copy paste and run in your own system. I will explain the whole process soon once we have a lot of people joining in. Right now we are at 11 participants have joined the call right now. We still have some time left, so how many of you have attended any of our events before? Can you quickly type like yes if you have done, or no, just to get general idea, like how many of new and how many of are okay. Getting a lot of no's. Many are new to this meetup channel. Welcome, guys. Yeah. So this is something which I iterate all the time. So the idea of this meetup, because you see that we have so many Python meetups going on, like in Boston area, and I started this meetup group because I felt that a lot of these events where we can do a lot of networking, but we don't really learn too much in terms of like, like a workshop style. So I thought that a lot of people who want to learn Python and who join those meetups, they get very less chance to learn, and most of the time they are just networking. So why can't we have meetup where they just come in for the whole purpose of learning new things? And so this is what we do in this meetup. Every time we pick some topic, and then topics are always like assuming people are starting from scratch. This is learn Python programming, so we would assume that most of the people who are coming to this meetup are new to the language, or maybe new to the programming itself. So we try to keep it as much simple and as much vanilla as possible, and try to accommodate people assuming that everyone is starting from scratch or like very new to the language. And that's how we deliver most of our content also. And that's the whole idea about this meetup. Like, let's come together and let's like learn something, and when we go home, we know that we like learn few stuff that we can go out and try and do something on that. Also, all of our meetups, we record all the whole 2 hours event that we have been doing since last December. We are recording them, the code, the video lecture recording, everything is available on GitHub. You can find our link for GitHub on Meetup page. Uh, Also, we have a Slack channel if someone need any help. I'm normally there to answer questions, or we also have a small community there. We just started recently. We are not as big as other big Python meetups, but we are putting it up there and be as much resourceable as possible if people who want to learn Python. We have 16 people right now. Wait for a couple of minutes more for the let people to join in, and then we can start. For this event, we are using PyCharm and not any other terminal, because I assume that a lot of people would be using Windows, Linux, Mac, and it gets complicated. So with the PyCharm, you can have like I can give the instruction, and that will work for most of the people. So that's why we choose PyCharm and not any other terminals or editors or IDEs. I thought this might be easier for everyone to follow up with, and single instruction works for all kind of platforms. We have 20 people now. Let's wait for some more time and then we can start. We have 20 participants at this point. Sorry guys, so I sent an email notification asking everyone today morning for installing PyCharm. I'm sorry if you haven't seen that. I should have probably added into event description too. Did all of you get an email in morning today saying that, hey, you need to install PyCharm?
Yes, we did get a notification.
Okay, okay.
I mean, I did get a notification. Can't speak for all.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, it's not too bad. Like, it's not like everyone, but yeah, that's on my side. I should have put the description on the event page also. Sorry, guys. Sorry. That's on me. I will take care of this next time to make sure that we put instruction out there. Anyways, let's get started. So again, welcome everyone for joining today's meetup. So today we're gonna talk about Flask, which is a micro web application framework built on Python. Flask is one of the major framework, web application framework out there being used by people in industry and for building the web applications. And as we know that right now most of the software products are SaaS, like they're web based, and if someone is building an app in Python, Flask is one of those major choices that they have. People also, we have also seen people using uh, Django, and so the biggest question people ask is whether we should use Flask or Django, and why I'm choosing Flask is uh, the more so all the platforms, the biggest problem with using any kind of platform, any kind of framework is framework bring the faster speed in your development, but they also bring some kind of constraint that you have to follow certain methodology or certain ways to do the things that your framework is asked you to do. And it is always that balance, that how much freedom you want and how much. So the more freedom, the more work that you have to do, more bare metal system you have, and then more easier it to build, the more constraint you have. So you have to find the right balance between something which is like, which has enough space for you to customize your work or customize your use case, versus faster to build an app on. So Flask, I feel like sat really nicely in between, so that's why we use Flask is in our development. uh, Now, before we move into the Flask and development process, I want to talk about the software architectures that we use nowadays. So let's say you want to build an app, a, a small idea. Let's say you want to build an app, how the architecture look like, how the, how the whole thing work out together with all the different components in there. So in very simple terms, we have something like backend Python app, Flask based app, and then which of course talk to database, because you need a place where you can store the data and retrieve the data and like persist the data. And then your web browser, as I talk about, is this a web application? So your web browser basically talk to your backend Python app, and then back and forth. So request and response of web pages, and sometimes also mobile app. Now this request and response happen on HTTP protocol, hypertext transfer protocol, that we use today on internet. That is the standard that we have been using it for all of our communication over the internet. Uh, Now, the structure that you see right now is called traditional architecture, and I'll tell you a bit why it is. So every time your web browser want to, let's say you go to, let's say www.amazon.com. So what happens? You make the request to the backend, and backend will serve the full HTML content for the rendering. So on every request, you say, let's say you click on certain product. So when you make a request, your backend will create the whole HTML page for you and everything. It's a huge amount of content that is being transferred on every request and response. So this is a easy but still a very cluttered and monolithic architecture. And let's say you have a mobile app which only require request data, you have to create extra code or duplicate code to deal with that. Uh, Today we're going to build something very similar to monolithic architecture, but because it is like because it is very entry level or small applications for like for 1 hour and 30 minutes we can do something small, because uh, this is not something being used too much in industry. People who start their first project or like want to build something very faster may use this approach because it is easier, but going further it will get very difficult. So this is something so the idea here is every time you make a request, your backend Python will send the full HTML page for to the front end, along with all these supportive styling classes and styling files, CSS and JavaScript, every time on each and every request. And this is a traditional approach. We're going to follow this approach for the purpose that it's easier to understand, for the purpose of understanding how Flask work. But this is one approach. It's called monolithic approach, and this is really not scalable. Now, the next approach is called decoupled architecture, or sometimes also called microservices. So in this architecture, you have your Python backend app. The only thing that it transfer or it communicate with is like raw data. So when you are asking for Amazon.com, so in case of Amazon.com, the previous architecture, your backend app used to send the full page, HTML page, to the front end. Here, you have in the front end, you have something called front end apps, which are built on React and Angular, which are like front end architecture, front end softwares, you can say that, who only ask for data that it requires to render. So uh, React and Angular. So if you can see here in the web browser side, in the front end side, you have React and Angular who actually help you do the rendering. And when you click on give me the product, so React and Angular will only ask for like only send me data about the product. What is the product name? What is the, like what is the price and what is the content? Like very small information, and you only transfer a small amount of data across your backend and front end. And this is easier because now this particular a microservice or your Python backend app act as a small unit, and which only communicate over the data that is being asked for and being sent for. So it's easier to build this kind of architecture. This is right now being used everywhere. Uh, so using Flask, you can easily build this kind of architecture. Flask support something like sending the whole web page, and Flask also support just sending a data. This is a decoupled architecture, and this is I won't take too much time. Sometimes you want to do like async operations. Let's say you want to uh, do some operation which will take huge amount of time, which what we call the backend batch processing. So in that case, your Flask application can take the task, put the task into the queue, and then it will just give you the response that, hey, I have accepted your task and I will get back to you once the task is done. And then the task is being taken, like the request is taken, put into the something called task queue, either RabbitMQ or Kafka. And then they are like they work as a manager and worker. So broker or task manager and task executor. So broker take the request, put into the queue, and then the task executor read the request and execute them, and finally do its thing independently. And finally, once the job is done, it will notify either through database or through other means, tell that, hey, job is done. So this is third kind of architecture that you see a lot. Let's say you want to do some complex computation. Let's say you want to build the model, a machine learning model, which take a lot of time. You can't just make the request and response, because request and response has to be like in a millisecond time. You can't have like 1 hour job hanging in here, because you have to tell your front end like, hey, like what is going on here. So you take the request and you say that, hey, I have taken your request, and just tell them, hey, I have taken your request and I will process it and let you know. And then you put the response back into the queue, like you put the job request back into the queue, and then being processed and being responded back. So now these are like three kind of architecture, or you can build all three kind of architecture using Flask. And for today's scenario, for very small use case, we're going to use this monolithic architecture, where we'll be also working on the web page. So a little bit of HTML code they're going to be see during today's workshop, but it won't be too much complicated. Now Flask also come with something called Ginger architecture. So this is like a templating language. We'll talk about this while working on our example. So what we're going to build today, we're going to build very, very simple app today. In this app, we're going to do something called to-do manager, where we can add the task through this text box. And then once the task is being added, we can either update and delete them. So actually, I'm choosing to do very, very simple tasks. We are not including any kind of authentication or login or any kind of this stuff, because then it will take more time, and it will take more than 1.5 hours to complete. So for that reason, we're going to do something very, very limited and simple that you can easily grasp. And then you can go out online and search a lot of tutorials that you can find if you want to like go to full-fledged app. But for the reason that we have limited time and we want to like cover maximum things, the conceptual things, so we're gonna do something very similar with something very minimalistic here in this event today. So on the question of band, will we be talking to authentication authorization? No, we are not going to do that in this particular tutorial. This is tutorial inspired by this tutorial link. You can follow this one. I will share the slides once the event is over. So let's get back to the PyCharm. So right now, what we're going to do is I will start writing the code. I will speak the instructions, but you should, it's fine if you don't start writing the code with me. What we're going to do is I will be speaking, I'll be typing the code, and once we will reach to some kind of a module, some kind of like minimalistic code, I will ask you to copy paste the code basically. And from where to copy paste the code, I will be pushing the code on GitHub. I will be sharing the link once I'm done doing this, and then you can pick up the code from there and then copy paste the code into your PyCharm and quickly just run it and see it, because it will be difficult for us to like me typing and you guys are following. It will be difficult to do that way. So I'm just gonna do some work. I'm gonna post the code on GitHub. I will send you the link and you can copy the code and then execute them into your PyCharm, and we'll see that way. So first thing first, for Flask, we will just create one file called app.py. This will be our main the main application that we'll be writing to. This is an entry point in our app. So we'll be running this file for running our app. Now, as any good software engineering practices, we want to create the list of libraries uh, that we can install and we can work on. So in Python, we have something called requirement.txt. This is like simple text file that will help you to maintain all the libraries that you'll be using into your project, and easy to install them and maintain them. So you know that certain set of libraries being installed and used. Flask will be one of those libraries. So let's create requirement.txt file, requirements.txt, and first thing, Flask. So with the PyCharm, it will, once you add something in requirement.txt, and if it says that Flask is not available, it will say install requirement. So now we are done. So it has already installed the Flask. Now let's start with them. From Flask, import Flask. This is the first line that we need to write. Basically, we are importing the Flask. My Flask is already still being installed. So because of that, you see like it's taking some time collecting Flask. Come on. Okay, here we go. Okay, now once you have installed the Flask, we want to do something called, we're gonna like create the instance of the Flask. We're gonna call that instance app, and then oh sorry. Okay, so this is how we just initialized. Now to start an Flask server, what we're gonna do is app.run, and then you can click on the run button, and this will start your Flask app. So right now, if you can see here, running on this localhost 127.0.0.1 and port 5000. So this is the default port that it runs on. Now let's do some customization. So first thing, when you're running an app, you can actually run into debug mode. So what happens in debug mode is when you try to make any change while developing, it will automatically reload your app. So so let's first create a small decorator to start the app, to get it going. So this is a decorator. If you are not familiar with decorator concepts, I have done it before in my previous lectures, or you can look up online, which basically wrap your methods with some other code. So here, what we are right now trying to do here is app.route. App.route, we are pointing to slash. This is like um, your in your web browser. This is like your home or initial path, and then you attach that path with this method called def index, and the index will basically return hello world. So so when you run this thing, so let's restart the app. You can see here debugging mode is on, and when we go to this particular path, you can see hello world. So basically this slash is right now tied to your method called def index, and then return hello world. Now, one thing that we want to really careful about when you are doing the Flask app is wrap this particular method around if name equal to main, So you should write your app.run method within this if condition. If you want to see why we want to do that, so the problem with not doing this is when you import this module in some other class, and if your app.run is like lying like that, then your the module which is trying to import this class will actually try to run this app. So if you want to see an example, what can happen, let's try to create one more just test class. And why we want this is to showcase that why we want to wrap our app.py under this if condition. So import. So here you could we'll see what happens here. So we have this app.py class where sorry, app.py module where we are just keeping app.run without any wrapper, and now we have created this test.py file, and we're gonna import our app, and then we try to run the test. So if you can see here, the app has started here. So test.py is not it's not supposed to basically run the app, but because while you import your app.py file somewhere else and it has app.run, so it automatically starts running even through the test file. So because of that reason, we don't want to keep it lying around like that. We want to wrap it around our if condition. So when you do that, and when you try to import app from your test file, and when you run from the test file, you see that it's not causing any harm. It's not starting the app uh, because you are doing import. So for that reason, we want to keep our keep it wrapped around separately. Let me just release this file for the purpose. Okay. So as you can see here, this is the most minimal code that you can write to start your Flask app and see what is coming out of it. One more thing, you can also change the port number. So if you saw that the port number has been 5000 by default, but let's say you want to set to something else, 8080, you can do that too. And can you open the file? Oh, sorry, here. Wait, oh, sorry, just here we go. So as you can see here, now the port has been changed to 8080. Okay, let's move to the next thing. So with the Flask, we have to follow this architecture where all the HTML page that you want to render using Flask has to go inside this folder called template. So this is like the Flask thing, that if you're using Flask, you must use you must put all your HTML files into this template, and then uh, you can also, the second one is a static folder will contain all your CSS and JavaScript files. So we are as well create a CSS folder, and then we'll use it later. So okay, so right now, as you can see here, this the simple route, the home route or slash route, we are able to render the simple string. And now what we want to do is we want to render an HTML page through this route. So how are we going to do that? So first thing, we need to create an HTML page. And for creating HTML page, we need to first create this templates folder, because Flask will look for all the HTML files in this template folder. So let's create a simple HTML file. Uh, let's call it index.html. Title, head, let's create sample h1, my home page. So this is simple HTML file, and in the app.py, so here when we hit the slash route, we want to render that HTML file we created. So how to do that? We need to use something called render templates. Now this render templates is available here in Flask. So we need to import render templates here. And here it's called index.html. So we will simply pass index.html and we will save this thing. So as you can see that because it is in debug mode, it automatically detected change in file and reloading. So now let's go back to our web page. So you can see that right now it has changed to my home. And if you want to look at the source code of the page, you can see that this is the source code being sent by our Flask. So as I was talking about sending the whole page, rendered page to the UI. So this is how it works, where when you want to send the whole web page to the UI, to your web browser, you say render template, and then you talk about the template that you want to send there. Now you may think that why I'm calling this render template, why I'm not sending just simple, HTML code here. That is because so you can technically also do something like this. In the string, you can say, HTML and HTML and body and body, and then say hello. Something very simple. And if I do that, it will also work. But the idea is you don't want to like add the whole string here, and it will just get complicated because normal web pages are so long that you cannot really, you cannot really write the whole web page, whole HTML content all together in this kind of way. So you want to keep them nice and tidy, and you want to keep them into the separate HTML files, and then you can call the render as render template to render them. So this is the right way to do it, and this is how the scalable way to do it. And one more thing, so in the render template, so far what we are able to see here is a static page, and we can also do something like dynamic page. And render template, what basically it does is it take your HTML page or Ginger template and fill it up with the dynamic information. Now what I'm talking about here, uh, so let's look at the what is Flask Jinja is. So Jinja template basically is dynamic place where you can introduce a Jinja template, and you can see here this kind of blocks. This in this kind of blocks, which is like not so HTML thing, where you can pass on the data, and the Jinja template will basically render those data and fill out your HTML page. So let's say in this HTML page, we want to pass. So this is the header. So in the Jinja template, if you want to print any data, you can simply use this curly braces, and the whole Jinja template, basic and how to do it, how to use it, how to do it, and all the APIs and basically a template language you can learn through there is a official page, template designer page. But for so here, if you want to just render simple variable, so you can use this two curly braces and pass in the variable here. So how are we going to pass it? So we're going to say here as a let's call it a page name, and how this page name going to reach here. So inside our app, we're going to pass page underscore name equal to let's say home page. So now what this will do is that this variable will be passed in our Jinja template here. And because we are using render template, it will take this data, it will take this HTML and put this data inside the HTML and process and create the HTML file that will replace our Jinja template thing with the pure HTML. So now let's run this thing and let's check it out how it works out. So you can see here we pass home page and page name. So this page name was transferred to in the single page, and now you can see the value of page name being replaced by the value that we have passed here into the template. So I think at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to commit my whole code and push it, and then I will send you the link so that you can try copy paste the code and run it within your local environment. So git Headstart, git commit test, and I'll just call it part one. And then, I know I'm doing very crappy job here, but just uh, crappy job in terms of committing the files. But please bear with me. I will soon send you the link which you can open up to. Okay, so let's go to github.com. Uh, Here is our Python uh, workshop content. We are working on separate branch, and here you will find all the files that I've been talking about. Requirement.txt, you can copy paste Flask, app.py, all the content on app.py, and then other content. I'm posting this link into our Zoom chat, so you can copy. Are you able to see the link? You can copy the content from requirement app.py and templates into your local environment and try to run it. Once you are able to run the whole thing, just type yes or done or okay, so I know that some people are able to do it, and then once I get enough yes, I will go forward with the next step. So right now what we are able to see is how to minimalistically using Flask, how we can render the template, and how we can basically pass the variable. This is like very simple introduction, and slowly we will try to build on top of this. Let me just shut down my AC, which will create the buzz. So start with creating requirement.txt and app.py. Requirement.txt need to have the Flask, and once you have Flask typed in here, and when you come to app.py, your PyCharm will automatically ask you for installing the Flask, and that should go smoothly. Once that is done, Flask is installed, then you can go ahead and copy paste the whole thing. And once you're done with the copy pasting app.py, you can create this folder called templates, create index.html. Uh, if you While creating templates, if you right click and select add new HTML page, it will automatically give you a lot of content. I just have to change certain things. So those who are joining new, I just posted a link to the existing code through GitHub on our group chat, Zoom. Please follow the link, go to the folder, and you need to create requirement.txt file, app.py file, and templates folder, index.html file. Copy paste the content and try to run the whole thing by yourself and see if it's working. Once you add requirement.txt and Flask, and when you move to app.py, normally PyCharm will prompt you to install Flask, and you can just click on install Flask and it will install the whole thing. You don't need to worry too much about it. Yeah, this is also a good idea. You can just clone the repository and work on that. I didn't thought about that. I will keep pushing. You can just clone and then you can run it in your own local environment. I'm still trying to understand if we can do it better way where we can run the workshop without. It could be have been very much comfortable if we had like live session where I can just type in front of you on physical space. You can see and you can type, but having a two screen to look at would be difficult. One is mine, one is yours. Okay, so this is because I'm on different branch. Right now, I'm not commenting on master. So if you are not able to see on master branch, uh, if you can change the branch. So if you can see here on this link, you can actually change the branch and go to branch 6 because all my code is into 6 branch. Yeah, this is a normal practice I do. I normally not able to get any web browser page. Nick, are you getting any help? Is it are you able to run the application? When you click on run, what happens? When you go on app.py, right click, say run app. Yeah. Okay. You get nothing on console. If Flask is not installed, you can, if your Python, if you can access the your Python terminal, you can just use pip. Just type pip, and if it says something like this, then you can do pip install Python normally. So normally what happens is when I type in requirement.txt, when I type any kind of like package name, so something that we're going to use next is called Flask SQL Alchemy. And when you add anything here and when you go to your Python package, it will say that install requirements. So this has been my hack. Otherwise, if you can, if you are on a terminal and you can type pip and your pip is working, you can just say pip install Flask. And if that works, then uh, that might be another way. Have you named your file name correctly? app.py, Nick? Uh, while everyone is working on getting their app to run, Nick, you can actually set your screen and we can see what is going wrong if that is comfortable with you. Nick, can you share your screen? Is it comfortable with you? I can stop sharing and you can share your screen and we can see what is wrong with you in your terminal. Okay. Go ahead, Nick. I have stopped sharing my screen. Okay, permission. One sharing option. You can share all. Now try again. I have changed the configuration. I think the setting was okay. So actually, you are on Python console. Uh, so right click on your app.py file and say run app. Here we go. So what happened was you were on wrong console. So it's a PyCharm feature where you can start Python console within and wait. Okay, so you can stop sharing your screen. I can come back and then. Um, okay. Okay. So we are back again. Uh, so now let's go to next step. So as you can see here, what we want to what we want to build here. Um, so little bit, let's go back to a little bit of Jinga template and why we need Jinga template. So as you can see here in index.html, so this is only one page we have, but let's say we have multiple pages, and every page will have its own HTML head, body, and stuff like that. And let's say, and changing a single thing will be very much difficult. So normally what happens in the template, we do something called, we create some kind of layout template, which talks about, which contain all the generic HTML code. Let's say your header, your footer, all that thing which is like common across all the page. And then you create a separate partition page, which only talks about, the individual part of each page. So uh, what we're going to do here right now is we're going to create something called base.html, and we will see. So doing this, we make our application very scalable. So let's say right now we have only index.html file. Going further, we might have, like, let's say 10 other files, 10 other HTML files. And if, let's say, you want to change something very similar, let's say you want to change this title to, from title to, let's say, title app. Now, if you want to bring this change to all the other HTML files, you have to go individually to each file and make this small change in each of those files. And it's very likely that we might miss that change. So instead of doing this multiple copy of similar code, what we do is we put all the similar code at one place, and then we extend, we kind of like use this as a base, and then at the only blocks that we need to like uh, change over the time, or whatever unique to index.html, or whatever it will be unique to all the other pages, that only we will keep in all those pages. And base.html will have all the common pages. One of the very common example is all the importing of the libraries. So let's say going forward, we want to import all the JSON and CSS libraries. And for every new library, we need to go and change into every other page if we don't have one common place that is being shared between all the other page. So with the Jinga template, we can do that. So what we're going to do is, first thing is so this is our common page. So we're going to call it base.html. And inside the base.html, first we're going to keep all the content which is common, and then we're going to create something called blocks. Now what this block does is every time every time you are using some other web page which will be extending your base.html page, uh, it will overwrite all those blocks and only put the content there. So let's start working on this and see how it works out here. So here what we're gonna do is we're gonna create the head block head. This is all uh, Jinja template thing. So this is how it is. It's a standard language. So uh, you can read more about all the other things that you can do with the Jinja template and all the capability that it has. So here what we are going to create is we're going to create the head block, and you can say block end block. So this is the starting of the block, this is the ending of the block, and then uh, you can also write here like end block head, which is like nice way to like say that hey, this is the one block. And here let's say do this same for the body, and you can call it only end block or end block body, and mind this space. So every time you write this content, it has to have this space, otherwise it will give an error. And now let's go to base index.html file. So inside the index.html file, this is the unique path, unique thing that we have here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna extend and base.html. So this will extend our base.html, and then we want to overwrite. If you know the concept of overwriting, so basically we will be overwriting this block heads, this block that we have created here. So we want to overwrite this particular body block in our index.html. So we will come here, and inside the body block, we will write this thing. So just to indicate that we are extending, let's do this h3 and s3. We'll call this header in base, and then index.html. Now every time you create new file, and for which we want to like have the separate body block, all we have to do is just extend the base.html. So your index.html will have all this other boilerplate code. We will add more boilerplate code, so you'll understand why it is needed. And then in the independent page, you can put the independent stuffs that you want them to show. So we are already running this, and it has already been reloaded because of the changes. And now let's go back to our default page, and let's see here. Okay, I think okay, this is extends, sorry. So here you can see a header in the base and home page. So basically this is how normally we use the templating, and all this is possible because of the Jinja that is being used by Flask internally. So Jinja template is something independent, and Flask is using them. So you can take advantage of all these templating features or templating capabilities using the Flask within the Flask. And the value that being passed here with, so render HTML. So render template will actually take care of all these complex, going to HTML file, figuring out what is extend, what is base.html, what is the page value. All these things are being figured out by this render template page. And then finally we get this nice, the view that we see here. For now, let's remove this part. And come to our app. Now, next thing what we want to do here is, so if you remember on the start of the presentation, I showed that this is the template that we want to create. Now, those who know the HTML, basically this is a table. These are all the rows. And in the first row, which we also call the header, we have just like to do added actions, and then all the subsequent row we want to add some kind of the text. The value will actually go here, all the records, and then we want to able to add the records here. So for this design, we need to write a bit of HTML code. So just bear with me, and we'll go through this very fast. So here in the body part, we want to do that. So let's first remove this thing, and let's call this to-do list manager, to-do manager. And next you want to create that nice table. So for that, table and table, then first one is tr, so this first record ntr, and then td, that is for the first entity, and this is like the first cell. In the first cell we want to do, so we'll write to do. In the second one we want to write edit, so this will be the date, on which date we edit. And third one gonna be actions. So actions will have these two buttons for each record, delete and update. So we will work on that one. So right now, as you can see, we are done with the first, and for the second one, we'll just create it for a while. We will later see how we're gonna populate those records, but just for the purpose, we have like these three of them. In the third record, we have this to delete and update, which is going to be like a links. So right now we're gonna keep it like we will look into this how we're gonna redirect those buttons, but or redirect those links, but just keep it like that. And so first one is called delete, and second okay, href equal to empty, and update. So we have this now. So let's see how it looks here. So right now we have like this table. It's not nicely visible, but we'll do a bit of styling later. So now this is the table. Now what we need is a nice form, basically one text box and this to do button. So for that, let's do form action equal to. So right now we'll just action equal to home, and then method equal to post and form input type equal to text, name equal to. So this is going to be our task content, and yeah, this is enough. You can do also the id equal to. This is not required. This is enough. And second one is our submit button, type equal to submit, and value equal to submit. Okay, so this will give us this should give us nice this nice text box, this button, and then so you can see method not allowed. We will see why that is happening, and get and update. Now if you see here, there is something called method equal to post. Now when you're talking about HTML has different kind of methods. You can call them methods, get and post. And when you make a request, so if you can see here all the you can in the log of our in our Flask app log, you can see this get and then post. So get and post are kind of methods. There are also delete, post, put, different kind of methods, which is part of your request. So when you make a request, you tell that which kind of request it is. If you don't mention anything, it is by default get request. In the browser, when you type, let's say www.amazon.com, you are basically doing the get request. And then if you see here, this is the path. And then finally, this is the protocol, HTTP 1.1. And then this is something called response status code. So which is 200 means 200 means like it's okay. It's okay, like it's successfully done. There are different kind of status code which tell different kind of stories, and you can customize what it returns. But normally everything that start with the two is like is considered as a is it everything that start with the two as a status code are all like good, done, okay, accepted, fine. And everything that start with the four is like something went wrong, something is not allowed, something is not possible, something not found, famous 404. So everything to start with the four is a bad thing. Now what happened here, we tried to, so here it's a classical form. We try to create a request to our home path with post, and it says that method not allowed. That is because in our app.py here at the home, we are not, so we have this option, something called methods, and these methods tell that what kind of request it can accept, this route can accept. For now, we didn't specify anything, so by default, it was only doing the get, but to accept the post, we need to also provide post. So if your path with your path, whatever kind of request you want to accept, you have to specify all of them here. If you don't specify anything, by default, it will only consider as a get. And then because we want to do here post, we are using post. So that is that. Now let's try again. So it was accepted. You don't see any action here because basically we haven't we are not doing anything. We are just rendering the same thing. But the idea is it was the post request has been accepted here. So and data is coming in. So now that we have this this template, what we want to do here is we want to create a database, because all this data, like all this to-do list that we want to add, we need to add it somewhere in some kind of database. So how to handle database now with the Flask? So in the Python general itself, there are multiple ways you can deal with the database, and you can like store the coming in data and then process and respond them. For the purpose of this workshop, we are not going to install the separate database. We're going to use something called in-memory database, which is like easy to deal with because it is just part of it. And the library that we are going to use is called Sql Alchemy. Sql Alchemy is a very independent library which allows you to connect with different kind of database, and it's very flexible and very easy to use with certain abstractions, so you don't have to worry about a lot of low-level things. With the Flask, we have something called Flask SQL Alchemy, which is like wrapper with the Flask, and we can use that to create our small database. So how are we going to do that? So first thing first, we need to import the library Flask Alchemy. From Flask Alchemy, import Sql Alchemy. And after that, we need to do something called app.config. App.config will provide, so if those who have deal with database, we always have to provide some kind of connection string with the database, which it will use to connect to database, basically some kind of a URI for the database. So in our use case here, for our in-memory SQL database, we have to also provide the same path, and it's going to be SQL Alchemy database URI equal to, so this is our connection string SQLite, and let's say todo.db. So this is the database name where we want to store the database. And this says that, so this is like a relative path. It says that we want to store our to-do database DB file, so in the same directory as our project, and todo.db will be created within the same directory, and this is the single file which is store all our data in the SQL format, or in the whatever SQL database we want to do with. Now this is like just a database configuration and database file name. Now what we need to do, if you are familiar with the database, we normally have to create the table, and like the table structure that will hold our data. And with SQL Alchemy, what we're gonna do, we're gonna create something called model. So those who are familiar with model view control, where we map our classes with the database table. So something very similar. And so how to do that? How to create a table in our todo.db, which is like which is also in conjunction with our class and objects. So we're gonna create class called todo with db.model. And after that, we're going to create our columns. You can say columns or you can say object that we want to use them. Now before that, so this db.model. So for db, we need to create an instance of our class. So we're gonna call it db equal to Sql Alchemy, and then pass app. So that will tell that this is the database instance with Sql Alchemy for this app and db.model. Now what all columns that we need here. So basically when we look at this content, we can see we need something for to do and something for added. This is just an action. This is not the data. So we want like this 2 column, and we'll also add one more column called an ID, because you need some kind of a unique identifier to identify certain records. So we're going to start with db dot column, and so this is our identifier column, the first column, and we want to keep it as an integer. So db dot integer, sorry, and this will be our primary key equal to true. So we're going to call it, this is our primary key. So first is ID, our identifier column, and second is actually the content one for the to do. So we're going to call it content equal to, again, this is going to be, now this is going to be a string column. So column db dot string, and we can pass what is the maximum number of character we want in the string. So let's say 200. And finally, do we want it to nullable? So we're going to say false, because we don't want null value here. So now, so this is our content, and third one we want to add is called added. Now this added is actually basically a date column. So I'm going to call it date added equal to db dot column and db dot, this is going to be our date time column. So date time and default. So we don't want to like deal with manually adding the column. So whenever we add the content, whenever we add the to do task, it will automatically pick the timestamp and store it. So we're going to give a default date time here. So default equal to date time dot, now we need to import date time. Let's do this, otherwise we need to do date time 2 times. So from date time, import date time. So date time dot, here we're going to use date time dot utc now. So this will take the utc now. So here we are already set with this 3 columns that we want in our database, and so this is how we define. Now we need to create the table. Now before we move forward, let me push this code, and for you guys to pull this code and just try out whatever we have done so far. Because in the next step we have to run some commands to create the table. Actually, this is what tells about, this is the model, how our model going to look like, how our table going to look like. But now we need to actually create this database, this file, and for that we need to run some terminal commands. So before we do that, let's just let's just get you guys on the same page. Git add, git commit -m part 2 and git push. Okay, now you should be able to pull this command. You should be able to pull the whole git thing and able to run this thing. At this point, what you will be able to see is this to do task manager with delete update. And when you click on delete and update, it does nothing because we haven't specified anything else. But wait, it errors out because we haven't finished our work yet. But the idea is, if you reload the page, you should be able to see this thing, and you should be able to these tables here. This model that we have written here. Once you have pulled the code, please let me know. So I'll tell you the command that you need to run for the purpose of creating this this database. It is just two command, but I just want to make sure that you are able to create that command moving forward. So that's why I'm keeping this as a sync part. Please pull the code, copy paste the code, however you like it, get these changes into your local environment, try to run it and see where we are, and then Soham, I'm back here. So you can see, so one of the likelihood if you are getting an error might be this space you might not have maintained. This could be one of those reasons for error, because the template itself says that it has to be a space. So this is something to be wary about. Once you guys are able to pull the code, run the whole thing and see this thing, please type yes, done, able to see it, something, so I know that yes, you guys are on the same page, and then we can move forward with the next command. So those who are using Conda virtual environment, it will work really fine. Yeah, you may need to like, so first thing, just make sure that all the libraries are in there. If not, you need to install them, but otherwise any other environments would be okay. As a software engineering best practices, you always want to like not install uh, unnecessary libraries, and because of that we have uh, this uh, this pattern called requirements.txt, where you can list all the libraries that you need and only install them uh, as and when you need them. Those who are into data science or whose job role or dealing with the Python is not about deploying something on the production can skip that stage, because for them it's, so the idea of keeping it tidy and not installing unnecessary libraries are, they're hard to maintain, hard to manage, and software engineering process itself is hard to maintain, manage. So you don't want to add extra burdens, don't want to install something that you don't need, and keep it bare minimum. So it's just easy and nice practice in a software engineering point of view. So that's why we use requirement.txt. Those who are coming from Java world, they may know about uh, uh, this whole pom.xml and I forgot, Maven project management, where you use something called pom.xml to keep track of all the Java library, Jar files that you have to install from Maven repository. So there also you try to maintain all these libraries and versions. And same thing here. There you have pom.xml, which can do a lot more than that, but in essentially requirement.txt will help you to keep maintaining all of them. And if you, and thanks Barian for let us know that. So if you have this simple file, you want to install all the libraries in a single go, you can do something called pip install -r requirement.txt. This -r -r will go through each and every package and install them for you. So this is something useful. Please let me know once you're able to run everything. Just type yes, done, so we can go forward. And yes, SQL Alchemy, if you haven't installed them, make sure you install them either using pip or any other mean that fit with you. Okay, so far I've seen 3 done. I get 2 more and I will go forward. Please tell me if you're done. Just type like yes, and I will move forward to the next command that we need to do. Okay, one more done. Okay, so let me move forward. So next thing that we want to do is basically create this file todo.db, and this database file will have this particular table with this particular model. So how are we going to do that? So for that, we need to do something called, so if you can access your Python console, You can access your Python console through either within the PyCharm. If you look at like this whole bar, like below, you can see something called Python console. There's a terminal, there's a run, there's a to-do, but there is also something called Python console. If you click on Python console, it will give you Python console. You can also do this similarly on your through your terminal, but Python console will keep you in the same environment, so it's easy to do that. Once you are here, write something called from app import db. So this is just like we are importing this db from this app, and finally what you want to type is db dot create all, and now this will create. You should see the extra file being generated. Come on. SQL. So just simple to command from, you can also create separate, if you want to do that, you can create separate Python file. Setup db and do the same thing. If you have trouble with console, you can just like do this, create something setup db.py file and like write these two command and run it. And that should be able to create this todo.db. So once you have todo.db, that means now you can access the todo.db and work with them. Now let's go back to what we are trying to do here. The first thing we want to do is we want to be able to type something. When we say submit, we want that submit task to be added here. So how to do that? So as you remember here in our template, in our index.html, we have this form, action, and method with the post, which try to do that. So we want to capture this data from here and finally add it into database. So for that, first thing we need to come here, index dot, because this is where the request, the form request will be redirected here with the post route. So we want to be here and process that. So now let's first thing, let's try to like look into the request. So before we need to look into request, we need to import the request. So there is this one more path we need, request. Now if request equal to post, then basically like store data, else you want to render them. So now here store data. So when you have this post route, we want to capture the data being sent from here, from this input text, using this name text content. So coming back to app.py, we want to look into let's create one variable where we want to actually store the value. So we want to call it like task content equal to so this request that we imported, and request dot form for form parameter, and then we're going to use this name task content, which is like, you know, when the data comes, it comes with this particular name. So now the data, so now we are able to capture data into task content. We want to store this data into database. So how we do that? So first thing, before we store into database, we need to create the instance of this to do, and then use that to create to basically finally import into a database. So let's do that. So first let's create this new task equal to do, and it has this content. So content equal to task content. So now we have this object of to do class with the which is being initialized with this task content. Now we have that. Now we want to add this into database. Now, as you remember, or as you have known, that is always a good practice to write all this database or all this connectivity into try and accept block. So we're going to do the same thing here. The try db dot session dot add, and inside the add we're going to add this new task, and finally db dot session dot commit. Now, a lot of you are familiar with the MySQL, and MySQL has something called auto commit. So you don't have to type the commit when you say insert or add, but this is SQLite, this is not MySQL. So we have to manually say session.commit. So that is why it is here. And finally, if something goes wrong, we're gonna throw in we're gonna like just respond with saying that, hey, something went wrong. So this we are not sending the error message code. We are just gonna tell them, hey, DB operation failed. So it's simple. Now, once the request has been made, once it is like successfully being committed, we want to basically redirect them into the like main page again. So return. Now, for redirecting to home page again, we need to use something called redirect, which is again coming from Flask library, Flask package. So return redirect, and we're gonna process. So the idea is when you have a post request, you take out the like text content, you create the whole database session, and then you finally commit the whole content, and finally everything is successful. Then you return like you basically redirect them, and if not, then you say that, hey, something went wrong. And if it's a get request, then you do the rendering. So now let's try to see how it works out. Now, one more thing. We are storing data into database, but we also want those data to be rendered here. So basically, all the data is being stored on the post request, but not being, when you say submit, your data is stored, but it is not being posted here. So how are we going to do that? So for that, we need to change the get request, and we need to make sure that our template render the data that is being stored into database. So for that, we need to first we call it, let's say, to do task. So this is all the list of tasks that is being stored into a database. So how are we going to do that? So for that, we're going to use this to do dot query, and then let's say we want to order by our date added, and finally we want to fetch all. So this will give us all the tasks that is being stored into database, so we can list them into our app. So now we have retrieved all the data here. We want to pass that data into our Jinja template. Now we know that how to do that. In the Jinja template, to pass the data, we pass it through like just separate by comma. So your template name or file name, and then you pass all the data by separating with the comma. So right now we have only to do task. If we had like some more variable, for each variable we can just do the comma and variable name value, and something like that. So we're gonna call it to do task equal to the value to do task. So this is the variable which will be captured inside the index.html, and this is the data that we are passing, and we are just keeping the same name. So now your to do task is right now moving, or data is being passed on to index.html, and we need to figure out how to render those data. So this is where this whole path comes into the picture. Now let's just look at this part. So in this table, this is our header, which is gonna stay constant, our first record, and we're gonna repeat this record multiple times based on how many records that we have. So basically this represents the HTML code for single record, a single row, and for each record that we have in our database, we're gonna repeat this thing. So for that, in the Jinja, we have something called for loop. So how to use for loop and iterate through for loop the content in the Jinja template. So for that, we're going to use something called simple for. Then let's call it task in to do underscore task. So this is the main data or like list of data that we passed in here. And this is like simple standard for loop that is very similar to what we see in Java. Sorry, in Python. So for loop. So task will have. So in this iteration, the task will have the data for each of those records, and we're going to render them. And standard Jinja thing, how we end the for loop and for. So basically, this will be reiterated and like basically repeated for each record. Now, what we want in the first content. So remember how we this percentage or this particular operator with a parentheses talks about something that has to processed, and when you want to simply print variable name, you use this just parentheses. So parentheses just to print the variable name. So now inside the task, first thing we want to print is the actual content. So that is being represented inside task dot content. And second thing is the date. So for date, what we're going to do is task dot, let's just check out what we wrote here. It was date edit. So date edit. Now to convert into a standard Jinja date, we're gonna convert it to like actual date from the date object. We're gonna use date. So now let's go back and let's see how everything comes together. So here we are, and let's add task 1 and submit. Okay, what went wrong? For task in to do task, index.html, app.py. To do tasks is equal to do task. To do.query.order by to do task, task.content. What are we missing here? db.commit, return, render template, index.html. Index.html has this for loop. To task in to do, task.content. Are we able to store it properly? So this is a task, request.form, task content. Let's just print if this task is coming along well. Sorry guys, I had to do the real life debugging to figure out what went wrong, why.
content. If I say task 1 and submit, request.form task content. Task content. Let's see if it's reading by the ID. No, not that, not. Maybe you can check it with please show to the database. When I do the get request, so there is no content inside the database. db session.add new task request.form. Content is not being captured here basically. Just, yes, I can use the dev tools, inspect network. Let's do task 1. Let's see, submit. So this request header, request header, form data, task underscore content, task underscore content, request dot form is if request equal to post. Oh, sorry guys. So stupid mistake. It's a request.method. You have to check. Request is like whole object. Thank you guys for helping me with the debugging. So the mistake that we had was like it was comparing if request equal to post. Basically, you have to check request.method equal to post. Anyways, so now that you can see the task one that we added, you can see it here. Let's call it task 2, submit, and now you can see the task 2. So basically, we are able to put the data inside database and able to see them back and able to render them. So next thing is delete and update. So first go with the delete. So how to delete the whole thing? So for delete, first thing, what we're gonna do is we're gonna create another route, and then we're gonna use that route, and we're gonna learn a couple of new things also along the way. So let's add the new route for delete operation. Add dot route. We're gonna call it /delete, and it's gonna be get method, so we don't need get and post thing here. Method delete, and what we basically gonna do here is so for delete, what we want to delete, we need to understand, or we need to capture the particular ID of a task to delete them. So we have this one ID attached with each of those tasks that we're gonna use, that we will be using for our delete method. So how you can do that? So inside, so this is something called path variables. So this is like static path. /delete is static path, but you can assign something called path variable where you can capture the value inside your HTML path, your URL path. So how are we going to do that? So to do that, you're going to use this diamond operator. Inside diamond operator, you first say that what is the type of that particular path variable that you want to accept, and second, you're going to name it. So data type and name. And how you actually going to capture this ID? Simple. Inside the parameter, it will be passed down as a parameter for the method that is wrapped around this this route decorator. So basically this, if you have, let's say, multiple path, let's say something slash something and then another diamond operator and something else, it can be passed on like ID comma something else. Here we don't need multiple things, we just need one value to figure out which particular task you want to delete. So we're going to use that. So def delete ID, and so first we need to select the task that we want to delete from our database. So to select the task from our database, we're going to do is the task to delete equal to to do dot, again same thing, to do dot query, query dot, we're going to use something called get or 404 and then pass ID. So we're going to use this method. This will query and tell us about it will give us the task that we want to delete. Now, once we have that, again, the same thing, database query to actually perform the delete operation. So try db.session.delete, and then you pass the task that you want to delete. And finally, as you remember, commit. So db.session.commit. And once you are done with the commit, you want to redirect the whole thing into home page. So this is when everything goes right, and if something goes wrong, we're gonna send the message saying that db delete went wrong. So basically in this so we have created this delete new route, and here we are defining something called path variable, and the value of the path variable will be directly reach into the the parameter inside the attached method with that route. So here delete will have that ID. Using this ID, we're gonna capture the particular task inside the database, and then finally we're gonna delete the task and then redirect to home page. Now that we have that, let's go into our actual index.html. So if you remember here inside the delete, we have to provide the path. So first thing is delete, and second thing, if you remember, we need to provide the ID for particular task. So we're going to use task.id, and we'll come back later for the update. Now let's see how this works. So you can say delete. Okay. Again, so this is delete and task dot ID. So you call for delete and it's deleted. Sorry. So this is the delete method. You can observe here. We're passing to as an ID. So now we deleted our task. So this is how we can perform the delete operation here. And now let's move to the update one. This is the last operation as in terms of the whole app, and then we can decorate the app. We'll see if we have some time. So we have less time, so we may not do the decoration, but we will go through the the final update operation. So for the update also, we want to create one more route. So app.route, we call that update. And with that update, again, same, which one you want to update. So same thing, ID. And once we have that, update ID and task to update equal to do dot query dot get or 404 and ID. Now here in the update, it's slightly different because what we want to do here for the update is we need to create separate form for the update. So how are we going to do that? We're going to create new template here. We're going to call it update.html. Now we'll delete all this thing because we want to extend from the base. So we'll do a bit of copy pasting here and refactor the whole thing. So first thing, we require this base.html. So all the standard stuff. And then we don't need this table. We'll delete this table to do update. And then we have this, so this will be pointing to update. And we have this text box. We'll call it task update. And basically this is what we need that to post. Now one more thing. So when we select something to update, we also want to make sure that it retains the value that that is being passed on. So for that, what we're going to do is we're going to pass on the value for that task.content. So we're going to pass on the content. We'll see how we're going to do it. So this is what we need. We need a text box, we need submit button, and we need this value thing. This value will basically retain or like transfer the value from whatever task that we are working on. So let's come here again back into update. Now we need that. What we want to do is render HTML page. So this is going to be our update.html, and we will pass this task to update thing here. Now here there are two requests here, get and post. So post request will come from the update page, and we want to update them. So let's add get, post, because that form will send the request in terms of post. So when you get the post request, you actually want to like capture the data and actually change things, and otherwise you want to like redirect to the get request. So if not to make a mistake again, request dot method equal to post. When there's a post method, we want to first we want to figure out what is the content that you want to update. So because when you do post, you're basically sending the new content. So we need to capture the new content. So let's call it new content. New content equal to request dot form, and we have something called task update. So here we are capturing the task update. Now let's do the actual database operation where we actually delete the content. So what we're gonna do here is task content. Dot So we're gonna use some shortcut here, and what that shortcut is. So we are already pointing this database to like task.update, right? So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna directly update that value of task to update with the task.update and just gonna commit. So basically this operation, so this task to update is already pointing to the database or that data object that we have. We're just gonna update the data object with our task.update. Now this will be content basically, because task update will refer to the whole object, but we want to replace the content. So what we're going to do is task.update. So this is the whole object, this whole object that we have already filtered out, and we inside the object we're going to just update the content of that object. So dot content, and just override it with whatever coming in from the form, and then finally once we have the result, we're gonna redirect. We commit them and then return redirect the home page. So once it is done, it's all done, your update is done, we're going to redirect to home page for the exception scenario. We're gonna just say that hey, something went wrong. Something went wrong. So this is all about post request, or otherwise when we are just loading like the get request, basically before we make the update, when we like actually click on the update button and when we go to the update page, that will be our get scenario. So for that, we basically want to just render our HTML page and task to update. And the task to update basically is this task to update, and then this task to update will have that value that we're gonna render them. So now let's run the app again and go back to our example. So here we click on update. Wait. So sorry, in the index.html, we have to change this to update. So it point to our update task.id. Okay. So now we click on update. Render template. What mistake we made? Oh yes, we need to like task to update equal to task to update. Task is not defined. So we call it here task to update. So inside the update or HTML, we also need to call it task to update. Here we go. So here we are. So we selected task one. So this task one value was returned through this value equal to task, and that was because we are passing this content from actual data. So that's how we are able to retain. And then we click on submit. So methods equal to get and post. I said didn't accept the request. Oh yes, index.html, small bugs always coming in. Update task.id, that is correct. Inside the update, task update dot id, because we are redirecting here, so we are redirecting to update. We need to give the full path and not just update. Let's see if app is loaded properly. Let's start from the scratch. Update, task one update. Let's call it task 111. Submit, and now it has been changed. So this is how you can basically put together all the pieces and able to do that. So interesting thing to learn about here is this this particular how to pass a path variable and how to process the path variable, and finally use that path variable for our for the purpose of filtering, and then finally changing the result into database. So here I'm gonna commit all my code, and then okay. You guys should be able to pull the code now and then able to see the response. Thank you very much, guys. Actually, we are already outside the time, but staying for 15 minutes. Those who want to try and see the result can do that and let me know if it is working. For the limited amount of time, we couldn't like really polish our app. Whatever we can do in this small amount of time, we have done here. And in future lecture, we'll be trying to cover a lot of other things. We haven't seen all the validation that we can do with the app. different kind of database that you can connect with the app, and using the Bootstrap or any kind of like fancy graphics technology to really like make your app look like sexy and not very boring like this. Uh, but keep learning. Join us on our Slack channel. The link is on our Meetup page. For any questions that you might have in future, you can always reach out to me. I'm always happy to help people who are trying to learn Python and want to learn more. So if you want to, so basically here, if you see, so those people who are interested to learn about how we can, so this is how we can keep the front end backend separate. Here you can see the front end and backend are connected. Basically, your backend is sending the full HTML page here. But if you want to keep it separately, you first thing is you need to have the separate, Angular or React kind of platforms, technologies who are able to make the call to the backend and ask for data. And then you can have some routes which basically like look like this, which only returns the data, which only returns some kind of JSON or string and not like a render template. So I think this discussion is very well suited with the REST API. REST API also follow very different standards, and those who know about the REST API, they know that delete and updates, all these things are not supported there. So the idea is, if you want to really do the backend and frontend separately, first thing in the backend, your job will be very much easier because you don't have to worry about all this Jinja template and all these things. Everything will be should be taken care by front-end engineers using Angular or React.js. And from the backend side, you can just use simple take the request, process the data, return the data in either Python dictionary format or Python list format, or just simple integer or simple primary any of the data types. And one more thing is you should be using the REST APIs. REST APIs are some standards which allows you to it's kind of like standards that you need to use for writing your app, which is much more uh, it's much more standardized. It has many benefits. You can read online how to do the REST API. I might take one session on REST API using Python backend, where we won't have to deal with all the UI stuff, and we can purely focus on writing different kind of get, put, post request. And just to give you some kind of glimpse is like when you want to do delete operation, you can use the same route, and instead of REST API will take method, one of the method called delete. So you use delete method to delete. So you say that because the method called delete, and then you perform delete operation. All this action like delete, update will not have separate method, separate route when you're using REST API, because REST API recognize all your CRUD operation, as you call it, create, read, update, and delete, using the get, post, put, and delete methods, and like in the single route. So there are some standards around it, and it's basically how you manipulate the object over the internet. So REST APIs in itself is a huge topic, but that you need to use when you're going for really decoupled architecture. And then once you know those standards, creating the APIs are really easy in Python. It just take the data, process the data, and then return the data. It's as simple as calling some method, and instead of passing the parameters through within the method, you're passing the parameter through API. So yeah, you can look up for that. It would be interesting. Those who are able to do it, let us know. And again, if you have some special request, like some topic that you want to learn about in the Python, I can happily create the session for that. And for whatever time we have, we can discuss and we can talk about, learn about certain topics in the Python that you are interested in. Please let me know. You can either let me know over email, over meetup.com page discussion, or our Slack channel that we have. This session has been recorded, and we will post we'll post the link to this recording. All the code is everything will be on our GitHub page. So on the GitHub page, you can also look up all the older code and repository and video lectures, all our older Meetup material. So thank you very much. Thank you guys. Thank you for your warm welcome. Yes, elbow bump, Joy, and Kailas, and everyone else. Let's call it a day. So thank you very much, guys. Reach out to me whenever you need some help or you want to learn more about this. I'm happy to help always. Thank you, guys.